Hello YouTube, welcome to my YouTube channel, Annabella, and today I'm going to be reviewing Bridgerton Season 4, rated 15, episodes 1 to 4. Okay, so Benedict Bridgerton, the second son, who really should have entered a profession by now, and by that this is what Bridgerton the whole time has lacked. The second and third sons of titled people would have to go into a profession. They had three options. The military, so army, navy, obviously there's no Royal Air Force at this point because it's Regency, so it's army or the navy. You could go into that. Second, you could go into the clergy because most estates had parishes that came with an income and a house which you could live in, like Mr. Collins, yeah? Mr. Collins, who's got an estate entailed upon him, but before that he's got to earn a living. So he trains as a clergyman, which is a very respectable position for somebody who is going to become an ennobled part of the ton. Obviously, Mr. Collins is not going to get a title when he gets the estate. He will still be Mr. Collins, but his wife, Mrs. Collins, Charlotte Lucas, her father, who used to work in trade, is Sir Lucas, so he earned his title, yeah? So, and that title can't be passed on. It will die when Sir James Lucas sadly dies. But that's beside the point. I think his name is James. Sorry if that's not right. Anyway, enough of Austen. So you're looking at the military, you're looking at the clergy, you're also looking at the judiciary. And by that, I mean legal eagles and lawyers and barristers. That was perfectly acceptable. Another thing was to go into politics. They could go into the Commons because the Commons was for the people that don't have titles. House of Lords, where the Viscount Bridgerton would have a seat, and obviously poor John, Francis's husband, he would have a seat in that. And in fact, I was really pleased that they brought it up that he was actually a lord doing his lording work in the House of Lords. Shocker, because you've got the House of Lords and the Commons. And the Commons was usually for the third or fourth or even second sons, because they could go into that because they didn't have a title. They weren't a right honourable, they were just a mister. And that is so important, this distinction. The second and third sons would have to earn some money. They would become lower gentry people. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they'd probably get a little bit of a house and perhaps a couple of acres, like an enclosure thing, maybe 4 or 5 acres, and possibly farm that or live off that quite respectably. But they do it in a town or city that is not London because it's expensive to live there. What the family would do, is they'd have their country pile that would cost a fortune, and then they'd have their townhouse or townhouse flat. If they couldn't afford a townhouse, the family would have a flat in London, and they'd only be in that flat for the season, yeah? Because you've got to think of the chinks, the money, yeah? You'd be in that little flat apartment, and by apartment, it could be a whole floor or 2 floors of a big house because money is tight. And then people would, like, leave London because staying in London is very, very unhealthy. It's dirty, it's smelly, it's horrible. Nobody wants to be there. You'd only be there during the summer. Oh, my goodness, and the Thames would stink. So you wouldn't actually be there for very long at all. It would, it'd be pointless. Yeah, and sometimes the season would actually would house hop. Country houses, they'd all house hop. It's why they're so big and why they've got so many rooms, is because if you're hosting the ball of the season, you're going to end up with guests falling over everywhere. Your drawing room or your billiard room is going to end up with like 16 guys all piled in there going, because it's too late for them to get the carriage back to London. You'd have to have guest rooms ready. You would find loads of people. There would be a female end, there'd be a male end, because remember, it wouldn't just be the young people. Oh no, it would be the young people and their chaperones. Their chaperones would be so tired and knackered that they'd fall asleep in the ballroom at the end of the ball, like, where's Aunt so-and-so? Oh, last time we saw her, she was in the old matron's room and they're all asleep now. Yeah, things were chaotic at these balls, and I think Bridgerton has done a poor show of showing that, particularly in the country piles that we've not actually seen a lot of. I loved the cottage though, loved it. Benedict Bridgerton, he lives in his bachelor pad, and we know that he's been a patron of the arts. He's dabbled in this, he's dabbled in that, he's dabbled with his sexuality, he's dabbled with this because he's the second son and he's got the freedom to do so. But he would have even more freedom if he had a profession and job. And I know that sounds quite shocking, but because he's a Bridgerton, Having a job would mean that he would actually control his income. At the moment, he's having to live off his brother Anthony. Anthony's giving him an allowance, yeah, which is restricting what he can and cannot do. Anyway, enough of that, because a lot of these guys should have professions, especially like Gregory. I know he's going to go to Eton, but he should have a job lined up. They should send him to Sandhurst. Somebody in this family needs to go to Sandhurst. Somebody in this family should be, you know, at a seminary learning to be a clergyman in the Church of England, because that's what you would do. It seems preposterous that all these Bridgertons can afford to stay at home. Yes, I know that they've got the copper mine and they've got this and they've got that, but being a titled member of the UK aristocracy means you own land. Yeah, which means you're either farming it, timber farming it, farming animals, growing crops, mining it, doing something with it. Because we're land rich, money poor. If we're not going to go and have the British Empire where we loot everywhere and bring it back, because that was kind of the point, then they've got to be doing something. The only time we've seen anybody do anything with their country pile was in season 1 when Daphne got married, or whatever her name was, I forget. You know, the irrelevant one that is irrelevant because she never turns up anymore. But this was the first season that felt like a soap because you had recurring characters. Love what they did with Penelope, I love what they did with Farley, I love what they did with Penelope's mother. So nice to have Portia continually in the show. Loved it. Love the fact that we're actually still seeing her sisters and their husbands. They're going to be in and out characters. It's works brilliantly. Loving the fact what they did with Hyacinth. I felt what Hyacinth said to Eloise was right and spot on. That Eloise does need to wake up and realise that she's really privileged because she's being kept by her older brother. She doesn't have to marry. All the girls have got dowries, which means they're going to be sniffed up. And I'm hoping that their dowries are less than £10,000 because you don't want to get sniffed up by a fortune hunter. Or snapped up by a fortune hunter, or sniffed out by a fortune hunter. That would be awful. This season is very Cinderella-like, we know that. But that doesn't really fit with Bridgerton. Bridgerton is based off Regency. These should be mature novels. The first 4 episodes felt very Disney-like, and that shouldn't be it. Which is a shame, because Bridgerton has matured and got deeper. I'm loving what they're doing with the Dowager Duchess, though she should have found a dowager house by now and moved out. And yes, she can have tea as euphemism for you know what. You know, as long as it's not with unconscious people, because unconscious people don't want tea. We have to have consent. It's very important. Why haven't we got these professions? Because these people would be at the balls with their brothers and sisters with the titled stuff. Balls were not just for titled people. As we see in Pride and Prejudice, there's that country that they go to the local assembly halls and there's a big ball there. And the local assembly hall is full of the lower gentry and some of the wealthier trade people. Yeah? Lower gentry people are the sons and daughters of titled folk that have not got a dowry, that have not got any hopes of getting a title. They may be in like the line, but they might be the 15th person down, you know, that line from the title. It's like, you know, poor old Aegon, the unlikely, who'd got 10 various other princes in line before him and they all croaked. Like poor old Baylor. Oh, poor Breakspear. So sad, so sad. Killed by his own brother accidentally at that stupid trial of the tale. And what the hell is an Andal? Why? Just why? Anyway, moving swiftly on from that, we're talking about Bridgerton, part 1. So you've got these weird Disney vibes with it, and it doesn't really work. I get the full Cinderella thing. I get the maid mask, but it's a trope. A maid and a gentleman. It's so tropey and so overdone and so Mills and Boon. It's ridiculous. But what is really the icing on the cake is an illegitimate child would never become a maid. I'm going to put this out there. Illegitimate kids of titled people do not become maids. They get a profession. Or if they're a woman, they get a lesser marriage, i.e. they get a marriage to a mister, you know, because their dad gives them £1,000 as a dowry and actually gives them an education or a lady's education, which means that that mister's going to benefit from her good housekeeping skills. Yeah? These illegitimate children would be in people's wills. They wouldn't inherit the title, but they would get a little bit of cash. Because let's not beat around the bush here. Poor old Catherine Howard, one of Henry VIII's wives, is strongly suspected of being a aristocratic bastard. Aristocratic bastards were everywhere. You looked. They got jobs at the royal court, master of the stool, that are doing this, doing that, being a squire. they got important jobs. They were important jobs, but they were lesser jobs. Titled people didn't have them, but they would still serve. It's like the Queen, she's got ladies in waiting, and all those ladies in waiting are titled people. The children of titled people that are illegitimate got jobs like a greengrocer in the local village. It was an important job, and they could still report to dad or mum, and say, Mum, it's not going very well in the village. This has happened. You got to come back. Your steward's got drunk again. What do you want me to do about it? Don't worry, Tony, you hold on. I'll come down. They were put in positions where they could spy for that particular family. Illegitimate children were essential. Don't forget, John of Gaunt had 3 marriages. First marriage had a load of legitimate children. Second marriage to a princess of Portugal, had no kids. Third marriage was to his mistress, with who he had a load of pack of children. And this is where we get the Tudors from, because this particular line had been declared, no, you can't inherit the throne. And then they had to redo that and say, yes, you can inherit the throne. It caused all sorts of problems. But illegitimate children were really important. The fact that poor Sophie, I knew as soon as her stepmother said, oh, you're not in the will, I was like, yeah, of course she's in the will. She's going to be in the will because her dad has paternal rights. And this is really important because during this era, women did not have any rights. You only had rights to your children through marriage to your husband. If you weren't married, you didn't have any rights to your child. Your husband did. And if he was a titled dude, he'd decide on the fate of that baby. If it was a boy bastard, he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to take it, we're going to raise it, and it's going to go to Sandhurst for me and be a foot soldier and be an officer. Yeah, that's the best he can hope for. But that's like having the education of a second or third son. And in fact, one of the Dukes of Devonshire had a whole pack of kids. He had kids from his wife, he had kids from his second wife, he had his children, he had his illegitimate children, and he raised them in a big pack at his house. And I believe Lady Caroline Lamb was also there, which is kind of weird because she eventually married Lord Melbourne, but that's beside the point. She had a big pack of kids and he was raising them, and all of those children got an appropriate job at the end of it. Even the illegitimate girls, they all got appropriate marriages. Because the titled dad was like, you're going there, 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 you're going to be a clergyman, off you go. That is what I've done for you. You're going to have that position, it's going to work for you because we need to fill out these lower gentry, middle class, upper, lower middle class positions that are coming up. We're not quite sure what they are, but you untitled connected folk are going to have them. Welcome to Nepo babyism with your illegitimate children. That's basically it. And I knew as soon as that all got mentioned, she would be in it. I was like, why? That stepmother wouldn't have that power. As soon as that noble dropped, his clerk, his steward would be straight on it. The whole family would look at the will and go, oh, you've got to keep this child because she's getting this from dad. It says here in black and white, he's provided for her. She's staying. She's going to enter the season. Voila. And that's why Benedict's mother knew that there was another little lady there. She said, I think there may be another little lady at that house. All the way through, it's like she's been chip, chip, chip. Yeah, I remember something about that. Everybody knew, but they couldn't say it out loud because she was illegitimate. It's like the whole dirty gypsy thing to do with Heathcliff. Oh, he's a dirty gypsy. No, he's not a dirty gypsy. He's a dirty bastard. That's what they're implying. We will get to my Wuthering Heights review at some point. We're reviewing the first 4. So to Bridgerton. Very light, very flaky, not much substance. So this is like the icing. Why am I getting the icing before the serious stuff? I loved what they did with the other characters though, fleshing out Francesca and John's marriage. I loved that. Lady Danbury wanting to go. Hyacinth Bridgerton coming into the fore. You know, all of these things. It was actually quite nice not to have Anthony and his wife. I'm glad that they got some time off because it fleshed out everybody else. Colin and Penelope sorting out their position and, you know, all of that works really well. Maids' wars was a thing. Household staff swapping would be huge. Queen Charlotte wouldn't get it because Queen Charlotte is like, what's going on? Because her job, the reason she's doing the season is because her husband is permanently incapacitated and hasn't got mental capacity. She has. And this is how you prevent your overmighty subjects from becoming, basically taking the crown off you. You control them by having these seasons and balls. That's why these rules were put in. And bearing in mind that the Queen has got a whole pack of illegitimate children that she can't have any contact with, which is why their prince fathers have given them all these jobs. Because one, it maintains the royal family's control over these particular areas of public life, the clergy, parliament, the judiciary, the military, all of these, but it puts in people that are going to be 100% loyal because that person's my dad and he gives me extra 50 quid a week because I'm here. So you're gaining from me being here. And I've got a direct line. Anytime there's a problem, Dad, Mum, and how close, oh, who's your dad? Oh, my dad's that prince. He's only 8 from the throne. He's not going to get it, but, you know, yeah. You want some? Want some money? Yeah, take me. And that's how it was. So all of this is hokum pokum because the legal eagles, i.e. the family lawyer, would be down, get that will out and say every year they'd want to see Sophie. They'd say, I'm here every year. I want to see that child because you're getting this for her. It says in this will that you get extra money for looking after her. Every year I'm going to be there checking. And this is the steward of the estate and he's going to be there checking. So how on earth could she get away with it? I mean, it doesn't say how she's got to be kept. So she could get away with giving her the jobs. But in all honesty, she would have actually been trained to become a governess because that's how you would deal with that. You train them up for a governess, not a maid, because a maid is a mask. Yes, the mum may have been a maid, but actually she was put into her father's care, which means that she was actually going to be on the governess track because her education under him would be this. There were some maids that did keep their children and they were paid an allowance from the papa, and then papa would then say at a certain age, right, they've got to go to this school because I'm going to pay for it and you're going to allow it and you'll see them in the holidays. And they'd go, yes, Lord. And that would be that. But the fact that this was done, the steward would have checked every year that she was there. Tick, 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 tick. Because you wouldn't allow a woman to run a household in such a way. The legal eagles would have been on it. The steward would have been there. We haven't seen any stewards of these estates. And it's an important position because you'd need one. It wouldn't just be the Lord. It would be the Lord and his steward. Yes, you've seen the valets, which are the male versions of a male lady's maid, basically. But we've not seen stewards or the bookkeeping people because they were important too. Because you wouldn't just have a steward. Steward would have 2 under people and there would be the family lawyer and the family doctor. And these would be trusted people. And guess what? They would be like 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th sons of some other titled people floating about. You know, all from the middle classes that were coming up. So all in all, the first 4 episodes are a bit fudgy, really. I did like the use of silver. I thought that was good. It was lovely. The first ball was really great. And then it got a bit fudgy because I felt had loads of characters, but everybody was sort of like, oh, we can't do that yet because it's too soon. We can't wrap this up. And it just felt, why aren't we wrapping this up? Anyway, but pacing is always going to be a problem. But then again, we've only got 8 episodes. But perhaps you need the 8 episodes to get to know the characters better. And I like the fact we saw more people from downstairs. I'm loving the inclusion of the woman with the arm or without an arm. Either way, I thought it was really nice and interesting detail to include. But they wouldn't be a front serving servant. You wouldn't be seen. They'd just be downstairs doing downstairs chores because it would upset the family. Somebody in the family would have like an aneurysm overseeing them and it would just be like, oh no, that servant's missing an arm. They'd go and be in the village somewhere. Like Jane Austen. Jane Austen's family had a brother. He was deaf. He didn't live. He lived with his family up until a certain age and then he got placed with a family in the village because it was appropriate for the village to look after him, but he couldn't come back and live with his family at home. That was a no-no. He had to live in the village with the village family. And that's what would happen with anybody who had a disability at this point. So either be bedlam or you'd go and live in a country village where you'd be looked after and cared for and people would know, oh, that's so-and-so, it's fine. It's fine. They live with so-and-so and so-and-so pays them to look after them. Yeah. It's all right. And occasionally they might get a sweet treat or something from the person who's benefacting for them. That's how it rolls. Anyway, I've babbled enough. First 4 episodes, bit light, bit flaky. Why are we doing Cinderella in Regency? It's very loose, very Anyway, out of it all, I mean, it's nicely done and the aesthetic is pleasing and it does look very beautiful. And it's beautiful cinematography and all of that. So I'm going to give it 3.5. But I mean, it is a tired trope. Let's hope that episodes 5 to 8 we get some depth. because there's a lack of depth. Anyway, I've babbled enough. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and thank you so much for supporting me.